Well, good morning, everybody, and happy Friday. It's nice to see all of you. Hope you're having a fantastic morning so far. Have two special announcements before we get started today. First of all, today, Friday, is the day we're going to have the drawing based on all the artwork that's been submitted. So we'll have a drawing at the end of reading for your very own Harry Potter book. But don't worry if you don't win today. We'll have a drawing next week, so you can send in a new picture, and we'll put that information up again on the Facebook page, and we'll draw again next week on Friday as well. Second thing is at 10 o'clock today, we have a very special guest reader. So Liberty High School Superintendent Eric Volta is going to be here to read one of his favorite stories. And so if you get a chance, come back at 10 or even later on today to see Mr. Volta's story. Okay, we'll get started with day 12. Flushed with victory, they started to run back up the passage, but as they reached the corner, they heard something that made their hearts stop. A high, petrified scream, and it was coming from the chamber they'd just chained up. "Oh no," said Ron, pale as the Bloody Baron. "It's the girls' bathroom," Harry gasped. "Hermione!" they said together. It was the last thing they wanted to do, but what choice did they have? Wheeling around, they sprinted back to the door and turned the keys, fumbling in their panic. Harry pulled the door open, and they ran inside. Hermione Granger was shrinking against the wall, opposite, looking as if she was about to faint. The troll was advancing on her, knocking the sinks off the wall as it went. "Confuse it," Harry said desperately to Ron, and seizing a trap, he threw it hard as he could against the wall. The troll stopped a few feet from Hermione. It lumbered around, blinking stupidly to see what had made the noise. Its mean little eyes saw Harry. It hesitated, then made for him instead, lifting its club as it went. "Oi, pea-brain!" yelled Ron from the other side of the chamber, and he threw a metal pipe at it. The troll didn't even seem to notice the pipe hitting its shoulder, but he heard the yell and paused again, turning its ugly snout towards Ron instead, and giving Harry time to run around it. "Come on, run, run!" Harry yelled at Hermione, trying to pull her towards the door, but she couldn't move. She was still flat against the wall, her mouth open with terror. The shouting and the echoes seemed to be driving the troll berserk. It roared again and started towards Ron, who was nearest and had no way to escape. Harry did something that was both brave and very stupid. He took a great running jump and managed to fasten his arms around the troll's neck from behind. The troll couldn't feel Harry hanging there, but even a troll will notice if you stick a long bit of wood up its nose, and Harry's wand still had been in his hand when he jumped. It had gone straight up one of the nostrils of the troll. Howling with pain, the troll twisted and flailed with its club, with Harry clinging on for dear life. Any second the troll was going to rip him off or catch him a little terrible blow with the club. Hermione had sunk to the floor in fright. Ron pulled out his own wand, not knowing what he was going to do. Sorry, everybody. Remember to turn off your cell phone if you're ready. Howling with pain, the troll twisted and flailed. I read that. Hermione had sunk to the floor in fright. Ron pulled out his own wand, not knowing what he was going to do. He heard himself cry the first spell that came into his head. "Wingardium Leviosa!" The club suddenly flew out of the troll's hand, rose high, high up into the air, turned slowly over, and dropped, with a sickening crack onto its owner's head. The troll swayed on the spot, and then fell flat on its face, with a thud that made the whole room tremble. Harry got to his feet. He was shaking and out of breath. Ron was standing there with his wand still raised, staring at what it had done. It was Hermione who spoke first. "Is it dead?" "I don't think so," said Harry. "I think it's just been knocked out." He bent down, pulled his wand out of the troll's nose. It was covered in what looked like lumpy gray glue. "Ugh, troll boogers!" He wiped it on the troll's trousers. A sudden slamming and loud footsteps made the three of them look up. They hadn't realized what a racket they had been making. But of course, someone downstairs must have heard crashes and the troll's roars. A moment later, Professor McGonagall had come bursting into the room, closely followed by Snape, with Quirrell bringing up the rear. Quirrell took one look at the troll, let out a faint whimper, and sat quickly down on a toilet, clutching his heart. Snape bent over the troll. Professor McGonagall was looking at Ron and Harry. Harry had never seen her look so angry. Her lips were white. Hopes of winning 50 points for Gryffindor faded quickly from Harry's mind. "What on earth were you thinking of?" said Professor McGonagall with a cold fury in her voice. Harry looked at Ron, who was still standing with his wand in the air. "You're lucky you weren't killed. Why aren't you in your dormitory?" Snape gave Harry a swift, piercing look. Harry looked at the floor. He wished Ron would put his wand down. Then a small voice came out of the shadows. "Please, Professor McGonagall, they were looking for me." "Miss Granger!" Hermione had managed to get to her feet at last. I went looking for the troll because I thought I could deal with it on my own. You know, because I've read all about them." Ron dropped his wand. Hermione Granger telling a downright lie to a teacher? "If they hadn't found me, I'd be dead now." Harry stuck his wand up its nose and Ron knocked it out with its own club. "They didn't have time to come and fetch anyone. It was about to finish me off when they arrived." Harry and Ron tried to look as though this story wasn't new to them. "Well, in that case," said Professor McGonagall, staring at the three of them. "Miss Granger, you foolish girl! How could you think of tackling a mountain troll on your own?" Hermione hung her head. Harry was speechless. Hermione was the last person to do anything against the rules, and here she was pretending she had, to get them out of trouble. It was as if Snape had started handing out sweets. "Miss Granger, 5 points will be taken from Gryffindor for this," said Professor McGonagall. "I'm very disappointed in you. If you're not hurt at all, you better get off to Gryffindor Tower. Students are finishing the feast in their houses." Hermione left. Professor McGonagall turned to Harry and Ron. "Well, I still say you were lucky, but not many first-years could have taken down a full-grown mountain troll. You each win Gryffindor 5 points. Professor Dumbledore will be informed of this. You may go." They hurried out of the chamber, and didn't speak at all until they had climbed 2 floors up. It was a relief to be away from the smell of the troll, quite apart from anything else. "We should have gotten more than 10 points, Ron grumbled. 5, you mean, once she's taken off Hermione's. "Good of her to get us out of trouble like that," Ron admitted. "Mind you, we did save her." "She might not have needed saving if we hadn't locked the thing in with her," Harry reminded him. They'd reached the portrait of the fat lady. "Pigsnout," they said, and entered. The common room was panicked and noisy. Everyone was eating the food that had been set up. Hermione, however, stood alone by the door waiting for them. There was a very embarrassed pause. Then, none of them looking at each other, they all said, "Thanks," and hurried off to get plates. But from that moment on, Hermione Granger became their friend. There are some things you can't share without ending up liking each other, and knocking out a 12-foot mountain troll is one of them. As they entered November, the weather turned very cold. The mountains all around the school became gray, and the lake like chilled steel. Every morning the ground was covered in frost. Hagrid could be seen from the upstairs window defrosting broomsticks on the Quidditch field, bundled up in a long moleskin overcoat, rabbit fur gloves, and enormous beaver-skin boots. The Quidditch season had begun. On Saturday, Harry would be playing his first match after weeks of training, Gryffindor versus Slytherin. If Gryffindor won, they would move up into second place in the house championship. Hardly anyone had seen Harry play because Wood had decided that, as their secret weapon, Harry should be kept, well, secret. But the news that he was playing Seeker had leaked out somehow, and Harry didn't know which was worse. People telling him he'd be brilliant, or people telling him they'd been running around underneath him holding a mattress. It was really lucky that Harry now had Hermione as a friend. He didn't know how he'd gotten through all his homework without her. What with all the last-minute Quidditch practice Wood was making them do, she had led him Quidditch Through the Ages, which had turned out to be a very interesting read. Harry learned that there were 700 ways of committing a Quidditch foul, and that all of them happened during a World Cup match in 1473, that Seekers were usually the smallest and fastest players, and that the most serious Quidditch accidents seemed to happen to them, that although people rarely died playing Quidditch, referees had been known to vanish and turn up months later in the Sahara Desert. Hermione had become a bit more relaxed about breaking rules since Harry and Ron had saved her from the mountain troll, and now she was much nicer for it. The day before Harry's first Quidditch match, the three of them were out in the freezing courtyard during break, and she had conjured them up a bright blue fire that could be carried around in a jam jar. They were standing with their backs to it, getting warm, when Snape crossed the yard. Harry noticed at once that Snape was limping. Harry, Ron, and Hermione moved closer together to block the fire from view. They were sure it wouldn't be allowed. Unfortunately, something about their guilty faces caught Snape's eye. He limped over. He hadn't seen the fire, but he seemed to be looking for a reason to tell them off anyway. "What's that you've got there, Potter?" It was Quidditch Through the Ages, Harry showed him. "Library books are not to be taken outside the school," said Snape. "Give it to me. 5 points from Gryffindor." "He just made that rule up," Harry muttered angrily as Snape limped away. "Wonder what's wrong with his leg." "Dunno, but I hope it's really hurting him," said Ron bitterly. The Gryffindor common room was very noisy that evening. Harry, Ron, and Hermione sat together next to a window. Hermione was checking Harry and Ron's charms homework for them. She would never let them copy "How will you learn?" but by asking her to read it through, they got the right answers anyway. Harry felt restless. He wanted Quidditch Through the Ages back, to take his mind off his nerves about tomorrow. Why should he be afraid of Snape? Getting up, he told Ron and Hermione he was going to ask Snape if he could have it. "Better you than me," they said together, but Harry had an idea that Snape wouldn't refuse if there were other teachers listening. He made his way down to the staff room and knocked. There was no answer. He knocked again. Nothing. Perhaps Snape had left the book in there. It was worth a try. He pushed the door ajar and peered inside. A horrible scene met his eyes. Snape and Filch were inside, alone. Snape was holding his robes above his knees. One of his legs was bloody and mangled. Filch was handing Snape bandages. "Blasted thing," Snape was saying. "How are you supposed to keep your eyes on all 3 heads at once?" Harry tried to shut the door quietly, but "Potter!" Snape's face was twisted with fury as he dropped his robes quickly to hide his leg. Harry gulped. "I just wondered if I could have my book back." "Get out! Out!" Harry left before Snape could take any more points from Gryffindor. He sprinted back upstairs. "Did you get it?" Ron asked as Harry joined them. "What's the matter?" In a low whisper, Harry told them what he'd seen. "You know what this means," he finished breathlessly. "He tried to get past that 3-headed dog at Halloween. That's where he was going when we saw him. He's after whatever it's guarding. And I'd bet my broomstick he'd let that troll in to make a diversion." Hermione's eyes were wide. "No, he wouldn't," she said. "I know he's not very nice, but he wouldn't try and steal something Dumbledore was keeping safe." "Honestly, Hermione, you think all teachers are saints or something," snapped Ron. "I'm with Harry. I wouldn't put anything past Snape. But what's he after? What's that dog guarding?" Harry went to bed with his head buzzing with the same question. Neville was snoring loudly, but Harry couldn't sleep. He tried to empty his mind. He needed to sleep. He had to. He had his first Quidditch match in a few hours, but the expression on Snape's face when Harry had seen his leg wasn't easy to forget. The next morning dawned very bright and cold. The great hall was full of the delicious smell of fried sausages and the cheerful chatter of everyone looking forward to a good Quidditch match. "You've got to eat some breakfast." "I just don't want anything. Just a bit of toast," wheedled Hermione. "I'm not hungry." Harry felt terrible. In an hour's time he'd be walking onto the field. "Harry, you need your strength," said Seamus Finnegan. "Seekers are always the one who get clobbered by the other team." "Thanks, Seamus," said Harry, watching Seamus pile ketchup on his sausages. By 11 o'clock, the whole school seemed to be out in the stands around the Quidditch pitch. Many students had binoculars. The seats might be raised high in the air, but it was still difficult to see what was going on sometimes. Ron and Hermione joined Neville, Seamus, and Dean, the West Ham fan, up in the top row. And as a surprise for Harry, they had painted a large banner on one of the sheets Scabbers had ruined. It said "Potter for President," and Dean, who was good at drawing, had done a large Gryffindor lion underneath. Then Hermione had performed a tricky little charm so that the paint flashed different colors. Meanwhile, in the locker room, Harry and the rest of the team were changing into their scarlet Quidditch robes. Slytherin would be playing in green. Wood cleared his throat for silence. "Oh, okay, men," he said. "And woman," said Chaser Angelina Johnson. "And woman," Wood agreed. "This is it." "The big one," said Fred Weasley. "The one we've been waiting for," said George. "We know Oliver's speech by heart," Fred told Harry. "We were on the team last year." "Shut up, you two," said Wood. "This is the best Gryffindor team's had in years. We're going to win it. I know it." He glared at them as if to say, "Or else." "Right. It's time. Good luck, all of you." Harry followed Fred and George out of the locker room, and hoping his knees weren't going to give way, walked onto the field to loud cheers. Madame Hooch was refereeing. She stood in the middle of the field waiting for the two teams, her broom in her hand. "Now I want a fair game, all of you," she said. Once they were gathered around her, Harry noticed that she seemed to be speaking particularly to the Slytherin captain, Marcus Flint, a sixth-year. Harry thought Flint looked as if he had some troll blood in him. Out of the corner of his eyes he saw the fluttering banner high above, flashing "Potter for President" over the crowd. His heart skipped. He felt braver. "Mount your brooms, please." Harry clambered onto his Nimbus 2000. Madame Hooch gave a loud blast on her silver whistle. 15 brooms rose up high into the air. They were off. And the quaffle is immediately taken by Angelina Johnson of Gryffindor. What an excellent chaser that girl is, and rather attractive too. Jordan! Sorry, Professor. The Weasley twins' friend, Lee Jordan, was doing the commentary for the match, closely watched by Professor McGonagall. And she's really belting along up there. A neat pass to Alicia Spinner, a good friend of Oliver Wood's. Last year only a reserve. Back to Johnson, and no! The Slytherins have taken the quaffle. Slytherin Captain Marcus Flint gains the quaffle, and off he goes. Flint flying like an eagle up there. He's going to score. No! Stopped by an excellent move by Gryffindor keeper Wood. And the Gryffindors take the quaffle. That's chaser Katie Bell of Gryffindor there. Nice dive around Flint. Off the field, and ouch! That must have hurt. Hit in the back of the head by a bludger. Quaffle taken by the Slytherins. That's Adrian Pusey. Speeding off towards the goalpost, but he's blocked by a second bludger sent his way by Fred or George Weasley, can't tell which. Nice play by the Gryffindor beater anyway, and Johnson back in possession of the quaffle. A clear field ahead, and off she goes. She's really flying. Dodges a speeding bludger. The goalpost ahead. Come on now, Angelina. Keeper Bletchley drives, missing. Gryffindor score! Gryffindor cheers filled the cold air with howls and moans from the Slytherins. Bludge up there. Move along. Hagrid? Ron and Hermione squeezed together to give Hagrid enough space to join them. Been watching from the hut, said Hagrid, putting a large pair of binoculars around his neck. But it isn't the same as being in the crowd. No sign of the snitch yet, eh? No, said Ron. Harry hasn't had much to do yet. Keep out of trouble, though that's something, said Hagrid, raising his binoculars and peering skyward at the speck that was Harry. Way up above them, Harry was gliding over the game, squinting about for some sign of the snitch. That was part of his and Wood's game plan. Keep out of the way until you catch sight of the snitch, Wood had said. We don't want you to attack before you have to be. When Angelina had scored, Harry had done a couple of loop-de-loops to let off his feelings. Now he was back to staring around for the snitch. Once he caught sight of a flash of gold, but it was just a reflection from one of the Weasleys' wristwatches. And once a bludger decided to come pelting his way, more like a cannonball than anything, but Harry dodged it and Fred Weasley came chasing after it. All right there, Harry, he had time to yell as he beat the bludger furiously towards Marcus Flint. Slytherin possession, Lee Jordan was saying. Chaser Pusey ducks 2 bludgers, 2 Weasleys, and Chaser Bell, and speeds toward the... Wait a minute! Was that the snitch? A murmur ran through the crowd as Adrian Pusey dropped the quaffle, too busy looking over his shoulder at the flash of gold that had passed his left ear. Harry saw it, and in a great rush of excitement, he dived downward after the streak of gold. Slytherin seeker Terence Higgs had seen it, too. Neck and neck, they hurtled toward the snitch. All the chasers seemed to have forgotten what they were supposed to be doing as they hung in midair to watch. Harry was faster than Higgs, and he could see the little round ball wings fluttering, darting up ahead. He put on an extra spurt of speed. Wham! A roar of rage echoed from the Gryffindors below. Marcus Flint had blocked Harry on purpose, and Harry's broom spun off, of course, Harry holding on for dear life. Foul! Screamed the Gryffindors. Madame Hooch spoke angrily to Flint, and then ordered a free shot at the goalpost for Gryffindor. But in all the confusion, of course, the golden snitch had disappeared from sight again. Down in the stands, Dean Thomas was yelling, "Send him off! Ref, red card!" "What are you talking about, Dean?" said Ron. "Red card," said Dean furiously. "In soccer, you get shown the red card if you're out of the game." "But this isn't soccer, Dean," Ron reminded him. Hagrid, however, was on Dean's side. "They ought to change the rules. Flint couldn't have knocked Harry out of the air." Lee Jordan was finding it difficult not to take sides. "So, after that obvious and disgusting bit of cheating—" "Jordan," growled Professor McGonagall. "I mean after that open and revolting foul—" "Jordan, I'm warning you." All right. Flint nearly kills the Gryffindor seeker, which could happen to anyone, I'm sure, so a penalty to Gryffindor taken by Spinette, who puts it away, no trouble, and we continue to play. Gryffindor still in possession." It was as Harry dodged another bludger, which went spinning dangerously past his head, that it happened. His broom gave a sudden, frightening lurch. For a split second he thought he was going to fall. He gripped the broom tightly, with both his hands and his knees. He'd never felt anything like that. It happened again. It was as though the broom was trying to buck him off. But Nimbus 2000s did not suddenly decide to buck off their riders. Harry tried to turn back towards the Gryffindor goalpost. He had half a mind to ask Wood to call timeout, and then he realized that his broom was completely out of his control. He couldn't turn it. He couldn't direct it at all. It was zigzagging through the air and every now and then making violent swishing movements that almost unseated him. Lee was still commentating. Slytherin in possession, Flint with the quaffle, passes Spinette, passes Bell, hit hard in the face by Bludger, hope it broke his nose. Only joking, Professor, Slytherin score, oh no! The Slytherins were cheering. No one seemed to have noticed that Harry's broom was behaving strangely. It was carrying him slowly higher, away from the game, jerking and twitching as it went. "Dunno what Harry thinks he's doing," Hagrid mumbled. He stared through his binoculars. "If I didn't know better, I'd say he'd lost control of his broom, but he can't have." Suddenly the people were pointing up at Harry all over the stands. His broom had started to roll over and over, with him only just managing to hold on. Then the whole crowd gasped. Harry's broom had given a wild jerk, and Harry swung off it. He was now dangling from it, holding on with only one hand. Okay, we're going to stop there today. I hope you're enjoying the story, and we'll be back at Monday at 9. Before we go, I want to draw for the, I still didn't find a sorting hat, but I want to draw for from all of our artists for a free Harry Potter book this week. Remember, if you don't win this time, keep sending me your artwork. I'd love to see it. It's really fun, and we'll find a place on the wall for you, and we'll have a drawing for another book next week. Okay, so today's winner for this week is Jackson Milanese. So congratulations, Jackson, and thanks to everybody for tuning in. Hope you have a great day. Remember, if you're able, come back at 10 o'clock today for special guest reader, Superintendent Eric Volta from the Liberty High School District.